But as far as what's happening or what's going to happen, the truth is, I never liked to say things that have to do with predictions. There is a certain opinion written by a famed Kabbalist and great Hasidic Rabbi who lived approximately 200 years ago, who says that when it comes to the time of the Mashiach, everything is true, and yet it doesn't have to happen. You understand? Whatever they say, let's say if there is a rumor that something is going to happen soon or whatever, it is very possible, but that doesn't mean it's not guaranteed to happen. That's the way it is, because right now we stand on one thing. The Jewish people must become better. Lately, in Israel, many things are happening. Accidents, car accidents, murderous car accidents that we never heard of before. The second thing is even more alarming, the rate of murders in Israel. Assassinations of the worst kind. All these come to tell us that something is definitely brewing, and there's no question about it. The Jewish people must try to become better. They must try to do whatever is possible for everyone to do, to be different in a positive manner than yesterday, than before. It is an obligation. We are coming to that time in which we cannot afford to be asleep. We have to wake up. And if a person today does what is right, let me give you an example. So many Jews go by without having, and I'm talking about religious Jews, Jews who go to prayer every day, they put tefillin and tzitzit, they finish the prayer and then they leave to work. So many of them do not even have the realization that as a Jew, you have another obligation to sit down and learn, even for half hour a day. One of the obligations, one of the most important obligations of the Jews is that you must have a load of Torah in you every day. You must attend the shiur every day, whether it is in the morning or if it is in the night, or even better, in the morning and in the night. This is something that by 75% of the Jewish people, it's not yet in their subconscious. It does not exist. So many of them think that Judaism is only to do the mitzvot and to do tefillah and to do, to keep the mitzvot. That's not enough. We deal here with the Jewish mind, and the Jewish mind must be fed by learning Torah. According to Shulchan Aruch, to the Maran Yosef Karo, you have to learn three hours a day, at least. He's talking for workers, for people who work. But today we tell the people even 1 hour is good. Even 1 hour. But the point is it has to be stable. Not on and off. When I can, I do it. When I cannot, they must understand that this age, which is bringing with it wings of uncertainty, we must understand that we have a tremendous weapon. We have greater than the atomic bomb in our hands, in every Jewish hand, the Torah. The Torah is a power of powers. Only, unfortunately, most Jews do not use it. If the Jewish people would bring themselves into at least this, a few minutes a day learning Torah with someone, or listening to a rabbi, whether it is halachot, Jewish laws, or if it is a lecture in Gemara, in Talmud, or if it is lecture in Jewish philosophy. But the ears of the Jew and the brain of the Jew must be fed by that which is our greatest gift, the gift of Torah. When a Jew does the mitzvot, he's religious, but he doesn't occupy himself with some Torah, his mind is not Jewish very much. His mind pertains to the influences of the time, the circumstances of time, the influences of the street. And the Jew is under the obligation to motivate himself to conduct and guide his mind with as much Torah as he can take. This is something that many rabbis are even afraid to talk about, and yet this is the crux of the nation of Israel. Torah. Didn't we read in the Pirkei Avot, Al Shlosha Devarim Ha'olam Omed, Al Torah, Ve'al Avodah, Ve'al Gemilut Chasadim. People say, how what's going to be in the world? Is the world going to withstand all the problems that are coming? Are we going to be able to withstand all the vicissitudes that are the lot of this planet Earth soon? What are we going to do? So the Pirkei Avot is very clear. Al Shlosha Devarim Ha'olam Omed. You want to be able to withstand the problems that are coming? You want the world to remain stable for you? There are three ways. The three of them are necessary. Al Torah, Al Avodah, Al Gemilut Chasadim. You must learn Torah, even if it is a little. You must do Avodah, which is the prayers. That is true. A Jew must pray every day. And a third, a Jew must be concerned about his fellow Jew by helping him and giving him a helping hand. That's what we call kindness or loving kindness. That's Gemilut Chasadim. You are set on those three great concepts. Ha'olam Omed, the world will stand for you. So that's my advice, of course, for whoever is listening, that this is the time better than any time before, better than any generation before. This is the time to make up your mind to always learn something. Our Torah is powerful, and if you cannot much, a little becomes your obligation. If we are lucky tonight, I'm going to share with you some formidable things. Hopefully they'll take off, because we are tonight not too many. At the same time, I would like to dedicate the lecture to the baby, Yonatan ben Galit. May Hashem send him refuah shalema. In fact, definitely we can relate this coming lecture to what we said before. But the subject is what we started last week. Ben Sorer Umore, the rebellious son. Let me just remind a few points that we already mentioned. The Torah says, Ki yele ish ben sorer umore. If you see that in your family, a child who is brutal and aggressive, and a bad boy, very rebellious, eno shomea bekolenu, he does not listen to the voice of his father and mother, bekol aviv bekol imo. No matter how much they tried to educate him, veiseru oto, velo yishma alehem, he does not listen no matter what you do. And he is a ben sorer umore, not only a rebellious, but he more. Our sages said more derech le'atzmo, which means he wants to take his own way. He wants to depart from the way of his parents. He rejects the teachings of his parents, and now he wants a new way for him. The Torah says something that is extremely impossible to understand. The father and the mother must hold in him, ve'tafsu bo, both of them, and they should take him to the elders of the town. Of course, these are the judges. And they should come to the elders, to the judges, and say to them, Benenu ze, our sons, this son of ours, Soreru more, is very rebellious. Enenu shomea bekolenu. It's reiterated, he does not listen to our voice. Zolel vesove. All he does is occupying himself with eating heavy food and drinking wine and so forth. The Torah says something that is definitely not acceptable, especially not this age. Maybe in Saudi, but not here. Urgamuhu ba'avanim vamet. He shall be taken to be executed by stoning. Doesn't make sense. Where are the parents who will do such a thing? Immediately people will jump to the conclusion that the Torah is savage. What kind of Torah is this? Especially when we know that the whole Torah is a Torah of chesed, of kindness, of compassion. Let evil be burned out from your midst. And all Jews should listen and fear. Our sages did analyze this. If you remember, we did mention, since we said that this portion of the Torah is unacceptable to the mind, especially the Jewish mind. Besides, it doesn't make any sense. Did you ever see parents who will be taking their son to be judged and executed? Doesn't make any sense. And indeed our sages understood that, and they said that this never happened. Lo haya velo nivra ela lemashal. And not only it never happened in the past, it will never be in the future. So the question is, why did the Torah bother to tell me such a thing? Right? We have two opinions of the old sages. One of Rabbi Yossi and one of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Those two approaches are bringing us closer to this portion to start to understand it. And they say the following. Rabbi Yossi says, doesn't make any sense, just because he eats too much meat, and he drinks too much wine, he should be killed. But therefore he offers his explanation. Ela higia Torah lesov dato. The Torah is very deep, and it perceived the possible future of this boy. And the Torah imagined that this boy is going to end up to become a criminal. He is going to end up as a robber and a killer. He is going to end up becoming a threat for society. Therefore, let him die now that he is still almost innocent, before he becomes a real criminal. Still impossible to understand even this opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Because what do you mean to tell me? You mean to tell me you take a child, still innocent as much as possible, okay, he doesn't listen, he doesn't do that, but take him and kill him just because of what's possibly going to happen in the future? Since when the Torah executed someone based on his future? According to Jewish law, even if you are capable of seeing the future, which nobody sees. But let's say you are a person who is a prophet and you see his future. You still are not allowed to harm anyone based on his future. So that remains in the dark. But keep in mind that the Torah is very deep, and our sages are extremely deep. You could be sure that Rabbi Yossi understood that. What did he mean? We shall explain. But second, we have the second approach. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says the same question. How can we conceive this situation Okay, the child is brutal, he's aggressive, does not listen. It's even possible to see from his deeds that he's going to become a bad person. But you mean to tell me that now we shall go and take him and kill him? This never happened, he said, Rabbi Shimon. This will never happen So why is it that the Torah bothered to teach me something that is impossible to happen? So the Torah said, so the Talmud says, Rabbi Shimon says, Eladrosh vekabel sachar. Rabbi Shimon says, you see, when you see a portion like this, that is not relevant, you bring relevancy into it. Let's see everyone bringing his own interpretation, and you get a reward for it in heaven. They will give you a reward for bringing your own approach, how to understand this. Which means now we have a task. We are going to explain the possibilities of this eventual problem. A rebellious son. Children who are not well educated. First you have to understand the following. The Torah, when it gives us its words, you have to know that many things are hiding behind. The Torah is extraordinary. I wish you would be able to learn every day just to realize that what we have in our hand is not something that is common to the world. How can you avoid thinking about, I don't want to say the word, the superiority of the Jew when we have a Torah like this? So deep, so full of messages, and such a text that offers so many possibilities that the mind flourishes. Every mind that learns the Torah flourishes day after day. Why do you think today, when a man like Rav Chaim Kanievsky says, who knows, the situation is dangerous, get ready to come to live wherever you are? Why do you even give credence to such words? Because this man has reached an age of tremendous wisdom. All his life never budged from the book of the Torah. He accumulated so much wisdom of Torah that is even greater than the wisdom of the prophet. Our sages said that. They say, Chacham adif min navi. The Chacham is greater than a prophet. Because the prophet, whatever he says based on what? The vision that he had, a sudden vision. But the Chacham, what he says, is based on his knowledge and his understanding. That's why, because when a person studies our Torah, the older he gets, the more vision he has, the more intelligence he gets. Even when he gets older, in the 90s, his advice is an advice. Our sages say that in the Talmud. Zikne talmidei chachamim, kechol shemazkinim, kach da'atam mityashevet alehem. Normally, a person who is an ignoramus, when he gets into the age of 90s or even 80s, he's lost. He forgets everything, he doesn't know anything. But when we are talking about a great Torah scholar, the more he ages, the more wisdom he sees in him, he has in him, and the more things he can give you. When we explore the Torah every day and we see the wisdom of the Torah and how it hides its true messages, especially when it gives us a text like this that has no sense. The rebellious son. Doesn't make sense. And yet, the Torah made sure that if you know how to interpret and learn the Torah, you would realize that in every word that in this little text, it has given us the clues how to understand the text. Let me give you just an example. Now this is something that can take months of study. But I'll give you just an example. And then, as I said, if we are lucky, we are going to go into a deep study of Kabbalah, a spark of Kabbalah again, that has to do with the possibility to make a house better, a house that can yield good children. But first, let's see what our sages, how they handled this text. From the approach of Rabbi Yossi, we see that he regards this boy as having no hope. And the future shows that he will become a criminal, as I said. So what happened? So the Torah says that the parents will take him, sentence him to death. What it means is that in the eyes of the Torah, this boy is already considered, if it is true that he will become a threat to society, he is already considered dead. Who killed him? That's the depth according to Rabbi Yossi. What killed him has to be checked behind. His parents, apparently they took him and they stoned him. That's not exactly what it means. It means by ignoring the shortcomings of this boy, rather than taking care of them the proper way, and we shall tell you later how, they ignored. Like I told you last week, the story of the father, that people kept on complaining about his son in the synagogue, that he is playing, that he's doing this, he's doing this. And the father would come on, he's a baby, let him play, let him play. And the scene repeated itself again and again, again and again. And the father keeps on saying, come on, he's only a boy. And he ended up to have a monster at home. He grew up to become a monster. What happened? What made him? What gave him this stoning by death? The fact that his situation was ignored. We shall explain. Not in every case parents are to be blamed. Of course, it is true that parents are most of the time the victim, and we blame them usually. Even children, they blame their own parents. And it's not true. But in many cases, it is true. And that's the approach of Rabbi Yossi. That's how he regards this text of the rebellious son. Something was wrong with the parents' education. That's what he meant in his words. And here comes Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and he said, no, this never happened, this will never be. Therefore, the reason why we have it is so to give us a possibility to interpret many ways, to come up with new approaches, to come up with new explanations. And he says, this parasha is given to each one's interpretations as to what happened in that house and what are the lessons that we derive. Let's see. According to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, you have to find the blame in the background of the boy. But first let's discuss what are the conditions that already sentenced this boy. Even though we are talking figuratively, we said that the stoning by death is only figurative. That since he is already going to become a threat for society, so he is considered already dead. And who stoned him? The parents. Or rather the lack of education. In the first line of this text it says, Ki yeh ish ben sorer umore. When a man has a rebellious son. So our sages said, this boy, we don't deal with him. In other words, we don't judge him when he is still a baby. He has to already grow to become almost a man, which means before the age of 13. Then we realize if the situation is serious or not, or that if he deserves to be called a rebellious son. Because after the age of 13, if he was rebellious before for a long time, then after the age of 13 there is a great chance he will remain this way. But that's not enough. We must admit that there were many, many bad boys in their tender age who became great tzaddikim. The Talmud tells us many stories in the history of the Jewish people of great people who became righteous men, and yet in their childhood they were known to be very very difficult to handle. There are many stories about this. But the second thing that it says in this portion, Ki yeh leish ben sorer umore. Here is a second lesson. It says if a man has a son, wait a minute, what about a daughter? You know, a daughter could be very difficult also. So difficult to handle sometimes. A daughter, you think a daughter cannot be a terror in the house? She can be a terror for her parents. So how come the Torah does not talk also about the rebellious daughter? Because the Torah says, Ish ben, if a person has a son, and he could have also a daughter that is very difficult. But the Torah means, no, we don't call a daughter a rebellious daughter. That doesn't mean you will never have a hard time with a daughter. Oh, you will. In some cases it's worse. But there is something about girls that boys don't have. The daughter, no matter how bad she could be, and that doesn't mean one should ignore. Chas v'shalom, God forbid. You should never ignore a negative conduct of any of the children, boys or girls. You should always try to take care of that. If you don't know how, you have to go to someone who knows. But she is not a rebellious daughter. Why? Because what makes a rebellious son? If we know for sure that when he grows up he will become a threat to society. Usually girls don't. Why? Because girls will marry. When they marry, their mazal changes. Even their character changes. A lot of the character of the girl changes when she gets married. She becomes a different person. Why? Before she belonged to her parents. As soon as she gets married, she belongs to her husband. Her mazal and character change, so we cannot assume that she is going to become a criminal or a threat to society. Therefore, the Torah does not refer to her as a rebellious daughter. But keep in mind that even a daughter, you must educate. Even her, you must contain a very aggressive daughter. No question about it, if you can. So therefore it says, Ki yeh leish ben velo bat. A son. We're talking about the son, not a daughter. I already said that sorer umore, which means rebellious in the vernacular of the Hebrew, but it means also more derech le'atzmo. When you see already that the boy is already developing his own way, not the kind of ways that he learned from his parents, but now he's developing a revolutionary way that is going to be extremely dangerous for all the family, especially if he is a firstborn. A firstborn boy has as much influence in the house as the father, and if he chooses a bad way, it's going definitely to reflect on the rest of the family. That's why by the way the Torah says in another place, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor kadesh li kol bechor. See the depth of the Torah? The Torah insists that the bechor, which means the firstborn, must be sanctified to God. How do we sanctify the firstborn? You remember, if you have a firstborn, you have to give him a pidyon haben. You have to redeem him from the Kohen. What's this blah blah? What's this process? What's going on here? The Torah calls it sanctifying the firstborn. The depth of the matter is that if parents would realize how important it is to give the best education to the firstborn, they already solved at least 60% of the education of the rest of the family. So you see, the Torah with its depth, it knew that the influence of the firstborn is so big that it's worth it to sanctify him. How do you sanctify a boy? You make sure he grows up as a religious boy, as a Torah boy, You send him to the best yeshivot. You make sure that he says his bracha, birkat hamazon. You make sure he puts his tefillin. You make sure he does everything that's proper. You make sure he says a bracha on each every time he takes something to drink or he eats something. He has to say bracha. Hey, did you say bracha? Did you say it loud? Now, some people might think that this is something that has to do with oppression and abuse. Shtuyot. Children, they love to be told those things because their neshama is already ready for it. Unfortunately, the generation has taught the population other things, different things, so the mind is already affected by what's going on in the psychology of schools and public schools and so forth. But the truth is that the boy likes very much to be guided. When a boy sees that his father is after him, of course always in a sweet way, but persistent. Never, one day you get angry at him and then the other days you ignore him. It's a deadly blow to his education. The best education is tell him what to do, instruct him how to do things, and constantly, but with love and friendship. You show him that he is important. You show him that he is almost like the father of the family, firstborn. And therefore he requires what we call kedusha, holiness. The holiness of the spirit, which means you have to grow in a way that the rest of your brothers and sisters will follow you. And that's what happens. But if he starts developing his own ways that are completely negative and different than what the parents have taught, then he becomes a threat. He is a ben sore rumore, a rebellious son. But make no mistake about it. The problem is rooted in whatever happens before. The problem is rooted in the education that he has received. How many times the parents have ignored a situation? How many times the parents have closed their eyes? In fact, this is what we are going to perceive inside the words of this little text. Watch. It says in that text, if you remember, V'tafsu bo aviv ve'imo. And both parents will hold him to take him, so to speak, to the elders, to the judges. So far we have learned that not in every case when we have a rebellious son, we blame the boy. No. If there is a situation in the family, a tragedy, father is missing a limb, he's limping, maybe blind, maybe whatever problem, the boy already is not in the category of rebellious son. Why? Even though he is bad. But at the same time we know that our approach towards him must be with compassion. Why? Because we know that the situation of the family has affected him. And that's what we learn here. Like for example, now we go to the figurative way to explain that if he has no, like we explained about the hand that's missing. We said the hand that's missing means the hand did not stop the boy from what he does. Many times stop him from what he does. Now we explain the same thing also about missing a leg or limping. It means that you were sitting in your sofa watching television, just as an example, and a boy needs you. Explain to me later, and you don't get up, which means your feet do not carry you. You must ask your feet to get up and go and immediately take care of whatever has to be done with the boy. If we realize that the reason why he became so bad, because that means the father had no feet, which means he did not use his legs to run and stop or teach or do what has to be done, the boy is not rebellious. He's bad, but he's not rebellious. Which means he is not given the sentence of a rebellious son. Of course, we have to deal with him in different ways. But in the meantime, we see that not in every circumstances we can call a boy a rebellious son. Even when the situation is very bad. Our sages said that, it says here, that even if one of the parents is mute, and the boy is very bad, you don't pronounce upon him the sentence of a rebellious son. Why? The father or the mother are mute, the boy is suffering. If he is suffering, immediately he is affected. And his behavior will be affected. That's the first explanation. But there is a second explanation. What is mute? Doesn't have to be necessarily mute. It means when your father had something to say, and he did not say, that's being mute. That's what Chachamim are teaching us. Same thing also for blind. First explanation, if the father or mother is blind, that means there is a tragedy in the family. That means that the boy is affected. You have to come to him with compassion. But the second explanation is what is blind, not necessarily with the eyes. It means that you ignore the situation. You saw a situation developing, you saw it and you didn't do anything. That means you were blind to it. Same thing also with death. If you are deaf, that's a tragedy. But it means also in the other way. It means that you didn't hear. How many times the boy comes to you, Abba, I have a problem, but you don't want to be bothered? Not now, not now, not now. Immediately when we investigate those things and find out that the reason why the boy is like this, even though he has to be contained, even though we have to take care of his behavior, but at the same time we don't pronounce him to be a rebellious son according to what the Torah describes. Let me tell you what is the core, the crux of the matter. How do we know that all this is left for us to interpret in different ways? Because prior to the text of the rebellious son, the Torah brought another portion, another text vis-a-vis when the Jewish people goes to war. In the old time, biblical times, when they went to war and they had great victory, and everyone now is in the frenzy of war, they were victorious. So now they had many, many prisoners in captivity. Among the prisoners, one of the soldiers saw a beautiful woman. He went crazy, he went berserk. Brigitte Bardot. Brigitte Bardot. Beautiful woman. He fell for her. The Torah says, according to the teachings of our sages, that listen, if the Torah is going to forbid him to take her, which is obvious, I mean she's Goya, she's not Jewish. You are not allowed to take a non-Jewish girl. But the Torah says, listen, I must make it easy for him. He is a soldier. Right now he is overtaken by his desires from the frenzy of war. He is in the midst of war. At that time the spirits are very high. Blood, when blood is spilled, that awakens all the other desires and things that the body has. So the Torah says, listen, if I say no to him, he's going to take her anyway. He's going to take her forbidden. So the Torah says, might as well make it not forbidden for him. I'm going to tell you a way, the Torah tells us, how you can take her in a permissive way. And the Torah says, fine, you want her? Ahlan wa sahlan, take her. Take her home. Don't touch her. Take her for 30 days. Shave her head. She's your prisoner. And we're talking about biblical times. We are not talking about today. So, be patient. 1 month. Give her 30 days that she can cry over her parents. And shave her. This way she will not look as beautiful as before. After 30 days, you still want her? Take her. Only convert her to Judaism and take her. That's the way that the Torah is giving us an advice how to take something that normally is forbidden, how to make it not forbidden. By the way, in the Talmud we find there is a story, piquant story, about a certain Torah boy from the yeshiva of Rabbi Chia. And the Talmud tells us that this boy, he heard about a certain beautiful prostitute, very expensive one. So he failed in his desire. So he said, he had money. He went and he spent a lot of money and he crossed the sea to go to her. And he went to her. And he was accepted. Ahlan wa sahlan. When are you going to see her? This is the time. Tanga. Okay. He paid. Everything is done. He goes in. She's there on a beautiful bed, golden bed, all marbles and gold and precious stones. And she is there, ready, beautiful as can be. He's getting ready. He's removing his clothes. He's removing his clothes. Suddenly, the tzitzit came up. You know, his talit katan came up. That's one of the sources that even 2,000 years ago they had tzitzit katan, the small talit inside, the small tzitzit. And the fringes, the tzitziyot, slapped him on his face. And he suddenly woke up. He said, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because of 1 minute of pleasure, I'm going to lose my olam haba. And he said, no. And he started to put back his clothes. And the woman, the lady there said, darling, what happened to you? I'm ready for you. Why, you don't like me? The greatest people came to me. And you don't like me? He says, no, madam. You're the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. But I gotta get out of here. I can't. She said to him, tell me why. What have I done? Did you see something ugly in me? He said, no. Please forgive me. Here is the money. Bye-bye. I have to go. And he left her. And he went back to the yeshiva asking Hashem for forgiveness and so forth. The woman was left terrified. Petrified, rather. She couldn't understand what's going on. Usually people pay a fortune for her. And here she is, left like this, and she doesn't even know why. She just realized that when he saw the tzitziot of his talit, he stopped. She started to understand that there are some values in the world that are worthy of considerations. She said, I don't care. I'm going to leave this situation of mine. I'm going to look for this boy. She sold her fortune. She gave 1/3 to the government, 1/3 to the poor, and she took 1/3 for her own needs. And she went traveling from one place to another, searching for that boy, for that man. And she went from yeshiva to yeshiva until she arrived to the yeshiva of Rabbi Chia. And she told him the story. Rabbi Chia is one of the greatest rabbis that we had in 2,000 years ago. And she said to him, here is what happened. And he left me. But now I cannot look over any man except him. Rabbi Chia smiled. And he says, the ways of God. Don't worry, my dear. Are you willing to convert? She said, anything. I will follow a man who has withstood against his own evil inclination and did not do what everybody else does. And he did not do it. I want this man. He called the boy, the man. He said, remember her? He said, of course. No, please. He said to him, don't worry. Hashem didn't want you to take her in a situation that she is forbidden to you. But now He is going to make it possible for you to take her the permitted way. She converted. And Rabbi Chia himself married them. She became his wife. And now she is his wife. Mutar, kosher. See? So the same thing also here, the Torah, what it did. with a Jewish soldier, what it did is this. You want to take her, she's beautiful, Isha yefat to'ar. Like it says in the Torah, we just read it last week. We read, V'ra'ita b'shivya, eshet yefat to'ar, v'chashakta ba, you saw a beautiful woman and you desired her. V'lakachta lecha leisha, fine. Take her home, 30 days, and so forth, and then if you still want her, take her as a wife. But if you don't want her after 30 days, make sure you give her everything that she needs and send her away to her parents. That's the Torah. In accordance with biblical times. Today, the minds are completely affected by everything that goes on in the world. What do we see here? Our sages said, what is the reason of the proximity between the portion, the text that's talking about the rebellious son, and the text that's talking about the beautiful woman that the soldier desired? Our sages say in the Gemara, Kol hanose isha yefat to'ar, sofo leholid mimena ben tzorer umore. If you marry a beautiful woman, you will end up bringing a child that is rebellious. Here is another mystery. What are you talking about? You are not allowed to take a woman that's beautiful? What's the problem? I know many Talmidei Chachamim whose wife is very beautiful. Besides, we have an indication in the Talmud that tells us, Ishana'a meravachat da'ato shel Adam. A beautiful woman is good for the mind. And in another place in the Talmud it says, why God created beautiful women? For Talmidei Chachamim. So that a Torah man would have his wife, the beautiful one, and he doesn't have to think about another. This way he dedicates himself to the Torah bearer. So here is, we see an indication that beautiful women is possible, no problem. So how come you tell me that if you take a beautiful woman, you will end up making a child that is rebellious? The answer is obvious, Rabotai. There's nothing against beautiful women. Even though King Solomon himself said in Eshet Chayil, in the book of Proverbs, chapter 30, Eshet Chayil, that which we sing every Friday night, I don't know if you do, but we do. It says, Sheker achen vehevel ayofi, isha yirat Adonai hi titallal. Beauty is vain, and charm is deceitful, but a God-fearing woman is to be praised. What is it that King Solomon meant? You mean to tell me when you see a beautiful woman, you see her, you want to take her? No. Go to an ugly woman? No. That's not King Solomon himself. I mean, would not resist the temptation for beautiful women to a certain point. So what's going on? The answer is, what the Torah meant to tell me is, if you go to look for a wife, and you are not looking at anything, you don't care about her character, you don't care about her upbringing, you don't care about her parents, you don't care about what kind of background she has been growing into, you don't care about who are her brothers, you don't care whether she is religious or not. All you care about is she's beautiful, I like a blonde with green eyes, and that's it. That's all that interests you, only beauty. You will end up bringing children that are bad. On the other hand, a beautiful woman is a gift of God. If God gave you a beautiful woman, why not? Why not? As we said before, the Talmud says, Ishana'a meravachat da'ato shel Adam. A beautiful woman makes your mind larger and better. So, the point is, don't go only for beauty. If it happens that she is beautiful, the one that Hashem is going to give you, say thank you to Hashem and that's it. That's what King Solomon meant. Sheker achen vehevel ayofi. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. But Isha yirat Hashem, the Vilna Gaon explains, a woman that's God-fearing and at the same time is very beautiful, Edit halal, that's something to be praised for. Why not? That's great. But don't go only for that, because that's the beginning of the downfall of that family. And why is that? Because a woman usually, I don't know if you will agree with me or not, at least this is what Hachamim say. A very beautiful woman is not going to take care of the education of the children properly. She is too much busy with the mirror. She's so upset with the mirror that she's not going to pay much attention to the. By the way, it's true. It is true. Most of the problems that we see among couples is when the woman is beautiful, automatically he has to get ready for all kinds of problems. So she's beautiful, that's costly. When she is a God-fearing woman and she wants to establish a family of Torah, there's nothing better. Why not? But if she is a common woman, coming from a background that has nothing to do with Torah and mitzvot, beware, because she's not going to pay attention to the children. She's going to be too busy looking at herself, making herself even more beautiful to attract the world. That's the way it goes, unfortunately. So you see, that's why our sages said, if you go only for beauty, you will end up bringing of course, this is only a possibility, because exceptions happen everywhere. There are always exceptions that you took only for beauty and yet Hashem gave you good children. But it's very rare. Very rare. One has to be very careful how he starts to establish a family. It starts already from the choosing of a woman. And then the next step, even at the time when the woman is pregnant, make sure you sing Friday night. Make sure you sing at the table. You want to know why? Because the child in the womb of his mother is listening. If he will listen to tunes of Shabbat, there's a good chance this boy will grow up to be great. Especially if he hears the voice of Torah. And that is number 3. Number 3, make sure your house, that the walls of your house hear Torah. A house that is empty of Torah, in which the voice of Torah never sounds, that's a house in which you will find a nest of rats, a nest of very, very bad fruits, unfortunately. That's where the children will grow up uncontrolled and finally becoming rebellious. Obviously. You know, I'll tell you a little tip. If you do it with love and you check your heart and you see that your heart loves the boy, but at the same time you are after him every day. Did you do this? Did you do that? Which page are you? Are you on the same page? Which usually, normally people today condemn. They say, that's not that's abusive. If one does it with love and friendship and yet persistent, the boy, not only he will grow up to be good, he will be more attached to his parents than those boys who were given riches and luxuries and everything, and then when they grow up, they ignore their parents and they throw them away in any pit. I tell you from my own experience, I see people every day, I see what's happening. But when a person shows the child that he is concerned about him, the child, even though now he cries or he gets angry at his father, but when he grows up, he will remember that his father always looked after him, that his father and mother always paid attention to him. He grows up never to forget that, and he becomes extremely attached to his parents. Even personal experience can testify to that. That's one of the reasons we did not succeed, my friends, to share together the Kabbalistical Torah that I had for you tonight, the extraordinary effect that every one of our deeds does in the universe, and at the same time how to live with your wife. I will tell you just the last few words for tonight's lecture, and what can we do? Maybe some other time we will learn it from this book, the classic Tomer Dvorah, written by the teacher of the Arya Kadosh 500 years ago, whose name was Rabbi Moshe Cordobero. He gave us a book that's worth millions, but it's not an easy book, it's Kabbalah. You really have to know some. I'm not saying that I'm a Kabbalist, like they wrote in the newspaper. No, I'm not. I'm just learning. I'm a student with my students. We try to understand certain things and we build up certain amount of knowledge on Kabbalah. One of the things that one has to keep in mind is, and that's the last tip for tonight, having to do with raising a family of children that are blessed. How you conduct yourself with your wife. The Kabbalah tells us that the wife is the vehicle of the Shekhinah, of the divine presence. When God created the woman, it was for the purpose to have a recipient for Shekhinah, which means the husband is not the porteur. He is not the recipient of, he's not the vehicle for the Shekhinah. It's the wife. Shekhinah is female. And the Kabbalah tells us that every husband has two wives. Now listen to this, doctor. Amazing. He says, Ima ila'a ve'ima tata'a. Everyone married, don't become alarmed, Margareta. It serves you very well. Everyone has, if you have a wife, you have two wives. One that is above and one that's here. The one that's here, you know her. But the one that's above is the Shekhinah. The wife, no matter how she is the one who brings the Shekhinah in. If you have no wife, the Talmud says in Masechet Evamot, Kol hasharui belo isha sharui beli simcha beli bracha beli shalom. If you have no wife, automatically there is no Shekhinah. And automatically you stay without happiness, without peace, without blessing. All the blessing that you have is because of your wife. And here is because of the Kabbalah teaching, now we can understand several of the teachings of our sages. We find in the Gemara in Masechet Baba Metziah, on page Pedalet, Le'olam izzaher adam bichvod ishto, she'en habracha metzuya beveto ela biglal ishto. One should be very careful to respect his wife, because all the blessing and the prosperity that you might have is only because of her. Why? So we think it's because of Sarah. She'ne'emar Avraham etiv ba'avura. That's not because of Sarah. It's because every wife is the recipient is the vehicle that transports, that carries the Shekhinah. If you have a wife, you have the possibility to have a Shekhinah with you. If the Shekhinah is with you, you have success in everything that you do. What is it? But you have to make sure of one thing, that the Shekhinah does not run away. And as soon as something is wrong in the house, if there is Tum'ah, for example, if one does not keep the laws of Niddah, here is a wife, and here is a husband, and the Shekhinah is in between. And that means, he tells us here, in this book, that if a person comes to his wife after 2 weeks that he was not with her, because of Niddah, but now she went to mikveh and she came back and now he's with her. He cohabits with her. The Shekhinah is also with them. What happens then? What's the ramification? Good children, good souls will be born from that cohabitation. But if Chas v'Shalom one, for example, does not keep the laws of Niddah, that's only one example. There is no Shekhinah. So where is the Shekhinah? She is supposed to be between the husband and wife. She is out, hovering. She has no rest. Usually, according to Kabbalah, this causes the world to shake. The constellation, the constitution of the 10 emanations, the 10 Sefirot, becomes confused. Automatically, things are going to happen all over the world because of one Jew who slept with his wife when she is Niddah. It's possible that in Thailand there will be a tsunami because of that. But at the same time, it's possible an earthquake in Iran. But it's possible that there will be also an earthquake in your house, Chas v'Shalom. When children are rebellious, the first thing that we check is if they are, Chas v'Shalom, from Niddah. By the way, it's very possible that if a person did not keep the laws of Niddah, and now he wants to start, everything is forgiven. If one makes teshuvah on that, it is promised that the past will not belong to him. If somebody does not keep the laws of Niddah, it's always time to change. Like a person who does not keep the laws of Kashrut, and now he wants to change, we will not remind him of his past. The Torah considers him a different person. So that's the point. That's the great privilege of being a Jew. Teshuvah changes everything. And there's always a good time for Teshuvah. That's the time of Elul. Let me conclude. The Torah tells us, when you take a wife, you check in Parashat Mishpatim, it says, you give her she'er, kesut, ve'ona. 3 obligations that the husband has to give his wife. And this is written in the ketubah, when you marry a wife. You owe her 3 things. The first one is she'er. It means you have to give her food and all the means with which to buy and monies and everything. According to Kabbalah, this is considered the pillar of chesed, kindness. Then comes the second part. Kesut, clothing. According to Kabbalah, clothing is gvura, is a harsh judgment. You have to get used to some concepts of Kabbalah. Why clothing have to do? What is that clothing has to do with harsh judgment? I'll give it to you very, very quickly. Remember Adam and Chava? Before the sin that they committed, they were naked. They didn't feel it was wrong. As soon as they committed the sin that we know, they suddenly realized that they were naked and they were embarrassed. The first thing they did was to clothe themselves. Which means clothing is a reminder of the sin. That's why it's considered in Kabbalah gvura. That's din. Din is harsh justice. This you have to give to the wife also. And I'm going to explain to you immediately in one word. And the third obligation that one has to give his wife is the ona. A set time, a fixed time for cohabitation. Okay? Understand that. To be with her in a physical way. When she needs. In fact, the Kabbalah tells us that there are 3 times a month, or 3 times in which to be with your wife becomes a great mitzvah. The night of her mikveh becomes a tremendous obligation and a mitzvah to be with her. The night when you come back from a trip becomes a great obligation to be with her, provided she is not nida. If she is, okay. That's the time when it's great mitzvah to be with her. And the third time is when you let's say you go to yeshiva for a long time, and then you come back. That's also a great time to be with your wife, an obligation, and a great mitzvah. Why? Because those are the times in which you go to her with love, not only for your physical pleasure, but also for your emotional reasons. You miss her, so you are going to be with her now physically, as well as spiritually, emotionally. That's the greatest setting for the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah comes in between, and again, if you do this with this intention, not only to satisfy your pleasures, but you do it with the intention to make her happy. She is the one who carries the Shekhinah. Automatically the children will grow to be great. Of course, one has to keep in mind not only this. What I told you is only a drop in an ocean of knowledge of Kabbalah, which some other time we will explore together in Mirza Hashem. But right now we should know, a house in which there is a voice of Torah is a wonderful way how to begin a family. Children, they hear the voice of Torah even from the womb of the mother. Number 2, the purity of the family. Nida, what gives life to the worst children is the fact that the parents did not keep properly the laws of Nida. Perhaps we'll talk about this also next time. Torah and the purity of the family. At the same time, the parents should never ignore the conduct of their children, but always to take care with persistence, constancy, but at the same time with love and concern and consideration for every kind of affectation that there is in the family. If there is a problem in the family, your approach should be with compassion and kindness. If everything is nice in the family and nothing is wrong, you have to take care and contain all the problems with the proper judgment and the proper advice. I'm sorry that I have to stop right here, because I know the gentlemen want to start their selichot. Hopefully I will see you next week, Be'ezrat Hashem. And let me wish you already Shana Tova U'Vorechet from now, even though we will repeat it probably next week. And the case of the rebellious son is brought to an end in such a way, even though there is so much more to project and teach regarding this great topic of the Torah.